22nd, 1963, the President of the United States got shot by somebody, but he was assassinated. And now I'm going to record some stuff on TV that Walter Cronkite is talking about, information. And I'm going to, here it is now. I'll tell you more about it in a little while. Bye.
The night and today in Washington, the grayness reflecting the somber attitude of a city in mourning. The President's body lying in the East Room of the White House on the same stand that once bore the bodies of President Lincoln and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Yugoslavia's President Tito, recently made his first official trip to Washington for a meeting with President Kennedy, and we have no information that he's returning to Washington yet for the funeral services. It was an effort by Tito to improve his periodically strained relationships with this country, an outgrowth of the Yugoslav leader's efforts to straddle the fence between East and West that brought him to Washington to see President Kennedy not long ago. There was hope that visit had helped improve the political atmosphere. This is one of those personal contacts made by a foreign head of state that now will have to be reestablished with the new President of the United States, President Lyndon Baines Johnson. It now falls to President Johnson to carry on or change the course of President Kennedy's policy. So far, his indications this morning in asking all of the heads of foreign missions to remain in their posts, that he intends no change, certainly immediately, indicates that he plans to carry on with the President's policy. There has been no word, as I said, that Tito might come to Washington for the late President's funeral. He did, however, issue this statement broadcast via relay satellite.
The news of the criminal attempt against the President of the United States of America, John Kennedy, and of his tragic death has deeply shocked and moved me and all people of our country. This sad news has struck me as the more as I have had recently an opportunity to talk cordially with the President Kennedy and reassure myself through the direct contact that he was deeply aware of the need of preserving world peace and of settling international issues in a peaceful way. President Kennedy has left upon me a powerful impression, both as a statesman and a man. I remember him from that meeting as a statesman of highest quality who understood the affairs in the world and who underworked in spite of obstacles of all kinds to act towards the improving of international relations. His activities, regardless of all difficulties he had to face in his work, yielded positive results in easing of international tension. I was confident after this meeting that had he lived, he would undoubtedly have contributed much more to the betterment of the international atmosphere and towards the creating of further possibilities for peaceful solution of various international problems. By the death of President Kennedy, the American people have lost a great personality of their history and the work of peace are sincere supporters. The people of Yugoslavia deeply grieve the great loss suffered by the people of the United States of America. The more so as President Kennedy, by his attitude towards our country, proved to be a friend of the Yugoslav people.
President de Gaulle, as we said, has announced that he will carry the sentiments of the French people to Washington as a tribute to President Kennedy. The man, he said, died as a soldier under fire. In Paris, French Foreign Minister Couve de Merville broadcast this statement via relay satellite.
It was with the most grievous impression of shock that we all in Paris and in France heard the appalling news of President Kennedy's cold-blooded murder. Many elements combined in our thoughts. the terribly premature disappearance of a statesman of first magnitude, the death of a man who was the incarnation of youth and vitality, the awful tragedy that hit a glamorous and lovable family, the general feeling of a blow inflicted to a great nation for which France from the beginning has felt the closest friendship, still reinforced by comradeship in free wars. For me, who've had the privilege of long talks with President Kennedy, the memory will never pass of his friendliness,
This is from a relay
his
satellite.
eagerness, his wisdom, and his courage. Believe me when I say that we all, the French people, today grieve and
I think
pray
this is from France.
together with the American people.
Ireland has sent word that President de Valera will be present in Washington for the funeral, and Italy's premier designate, Aldo Moro, who only today got the agreement of the left-wing Socialist Party, Pietro Nenni, to join him in a coalition government, apparently solving for the time Italy's cabinet crisis. He will come to Washington for the funeral services. Britain's new Prime Minister, Sir Alec Douglas-Home, will be among the foreign dignitaries in Washington, as we have said, along with Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband, representing the Queen. In London, the Prime Minister issued this statement, broadcast to us by the relay communication satellite.
This moment is the more poignant because only a few weeks ago I was walking with President Kennedy in the grounds of the White House, and he was telling me of his plans to guard and to keep
This is from a
the peace
relay
of the world.
satellite.
And as I recall his vivid presence, he lives in my mind as a man who, first of all, was a man of peace and a man with a deep religious faith, which was dedicated to healing the divisions between men. And then, as a man of physical courage, as you know, he was a casualty in the war and very often in pain. But he was a man who was determined that this curse of war should never scourge mankind again if he could do anything to arrest the dangers. And one, too, who of course had in his power and in his hand such power as had never been given before in the history of man to a mortal man. And he used it always for high purpose, and always to make the world a better place and a safer place for ordinary men and women to live in. And then again, I recall him as a just man, a man who hated bigotry, a man who believed that all men were equal in the sight of God and acted on that belief. And then a man who, as a husband and a father,
This was from a
was
relay satellite.
tolerant and human, and as a
The
politician,
president was shot
was a
when in
statesman
Texas,
who grasped all
and the person
opportunities
that
he
shot him
had
was with a German Mauser with a telescopic sight.
rare
He
in a
hit
man
the
of
governor
his
of
years.
Texas. I think the governor of Texas got shot and was dead, like President Kennedy. President Kennedy got hit in the head, and he died in 30 minutes.
And for us in Britain, his loss
This is the last relay I'm going to record.
a sad one, because he was the most loyal and faithful of allies. Tonight, I fear, there is no comfort that I can bring to the American people, nor indeed to ourselves, nor indeed to men anywhere who care for tolerance and liberty and justice and peace, unless it be this, that this dreadful deed should shock us all to dedicate ourselves anew to those things which he liked which he loved and for which he worked during his life. And if we can help to bring to men the liberty, justice, and peace for which he did so much, then we shall be doing something to serve the causes in the service of which he himself died.
And just in from Athens, the announcement that Queen Frederica of Greece will attend the President's funeral. So will the Prime Minister of Canada, Lester Pearson.
That was the last relay.
Representing
I'm
the
going to
Soviet
record.
Union, Anastas Mikoyan, the first Deputy Premier of the Soviet Union, will fly from Moscow to be present in Washington for the funeral. He, along with Premier Khrushchev, paid a personal call at the American Embassy earlier today to express condolences to our Ambassador Foy Kohler there. From Germany, Chancellor Erhard will head his nation's delegation to Washington. There is a possibility, not yet confirmed, that former Chancellor Adenauer would be coming as well. In West Berlin, where President Kennedy proclaimed that he too was in spirit a Berliner, the city saluted him last night with the candlelight glittering from the windows throughout the city. West German Mayor Willy Brandt, West Berlin mayor that is, will also be in Washington for President Kennedy's funeral services. Before leaving, Mayor Brandt broadcast this message to the United States via the relay satellite. Incidentally, it's not given from his Dallas home, but from Shreveport, Louisiana. But the statement reads, as I was saying, the sacrifices of our leading American family is the sacrifice of every American for peace. There is every need at this grave hour for strength and unity without recrimination that only reflects differences in beliefs regarding an acceptable price for peace. The statement of Major General Edwin Walker, which was given in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Walker, that was his statement.
General Walker, as you know, resigned from the Army 2 years ago in a dispute over his anti-communist indoctrination of troops, and was most recently in a slight imbroglio with the federal government over his appearance at Birmingham, the University of Mississippi, at Ole Miss, and at that time was arrested by the federal authorities, but later released. And in Dallas, Texas, the police chief Curry, who earlier today we heard tell newsmen there that the FBI had knowledge of Mr. Oswald, the man arrested for the murder of the President of the United States, had knowledge of him and had interrogated him a week before. Well, Police Chief Curry is now saying that was a mistake, that it was only hearsay, and that the cooperation with the FBI has been complete in Dallas, that he does not know and doubts that the FBI had interrogated Mr. Curry. Now let's go to the White House and to Robert Pierpoint.
Senator Carl Hayden, the President pro tem of the Senate and now the third man in succession for the presidency, has just entered the White House to pay his final respects to President Kennedy. We have been watching since 10 o'clock this morning this scene, long lines of black cars going in and out of the driveway, honor guards soggy with the damp rain, snapping to attention as men and women, government officials and political leaders, relatives and friends come by to pay their final respects to the President. We have seen in the last half hour now a steady stream of senators going into the White House. The first senator I recognized was the Republican leader, Senator Dirksen. Senator Fulbright, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Byrd of Virginia, a longtime opponent of President Kennedy's, but a personal friend, also went by to pay his final respects. A short while ago, you may have seen the picture of President Johnson emerging from the Executive Offices building, where he is still using the office that he used as vice president, and he walked across the street to enter, as Walter said, the east wing of the White House. It would be my assumption that he's in there a little late to meet with the members of the cabinet. He has called his first formal cabinet meeting for 2:30 this afternoon, and that should be underway about now. The late president's unopened flag-draped coffin is lying in the gold and gilt East Room of the White House, where it was placed at about 4:30 this morning, and it is there that the members of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, there is Congressman John Rhodes of Arizona just gone by, they are going in now to pay their final respects to the President in the East Wing. And now back to Walter Cronkite.
And the officials continue to arrive. There is Senator McClellan, the Democrat from Arkansas, chairman of a committee that had been investigating the TFX award, the contract award, which has caused a great deal of controversy within the former Kennedy administration. Other senators arriving. A very dark, damp, and wet day. The sky is weeping in Washington. There is Senator Ribicoff, former Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare. Senator Proxmire just passed out of the picture there. Members of Congress coming to view the body of President Kennedy as it lies in repose in the East Room of the White House. The casket, we were told by new Secretary Pierre Salinger, is closed and will remain closed. That is Senator Sparkman on the far side of the picture, the Democrat from Alabama. Senator Long of Louisiana with him. All the faces entering this north portico, very, very somber. There have been several changes of the honor guard in front of the White House during this long and wet day. Members from all the services are represented, both outside the White House and in the East Room itself, where always there are 4 servicemen standing beside the casket.
I'm going to shut the tape recorder off now. I'll resume recording in a little while.
A number of churches, including the Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church at 55th Street, will turn regular services into memorial services for President Kennedy. The Fifth Avenue service will be at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. The Greek Orthodox Archdiocese announced today that all Greek Orthodox churches in the United States will hold special memorial services at noon tomorrow. The Zionist Organization of America says its members will observe a traditional Hebrew period of 30 days of mourning. The city's movie houses are open today, and so are the Broadway theaters. Matinee performances were held this afternoon, and curtains are due to raise tonight for the regular performances. All of the theaters closed last night after the news of the president's assassination, and the same situation prevails at the Metropolitan Opera House, City Center, and Carnegie Hall. At Philharmonic Hall in Lincoln Center, there will be a performance tonight, but the program has been changed to include funeral music from Beethoven's Third Symphony. And the Brooklyn Academy of Music is also changing its program tonight so that the music will be more appropriate to the day. Motion picture houses will be closed on Monday in New York City until 6 p.m. A number of big New York hotels announced that they've canceled all entertainment in their supper clubs. At least the death of President Kennedy is the report that another famous personality died today. Novelist Aldous Huxley, author of more than 20 books, the best known of which was Brave New World, his projection of things to come. Mr. Huxley died in Hollywood at the age of 69, a victim of cancer. WCBS-TV will comply with the policy announced by Columbia Broadcasting System President Dr. Frank Stanton yesterday. Dr. Stanton said that in respect for the feelings of a shocked nation, the CBS television and radio networks will carry no commercial announcements and no entertainment programs until after President Kennedy's funeral. CBS will continue to bring all news relating to this tragic event and news and special broadcasts as well as other news of importance throughout this period. WCBS TV News will report on local activities throughout the day today, including all special announcements affecting the public. This is Warren Moran.
Oswald's wife and mother apparently are still in the city hall. Oswald awaiting transfer to the county jail. By his mother and by some friends and neighbors, Oswald was a quiet, very neat man,
I turned this one all the way up,
but an admitted communist.
The needle jump.
Momentarily, Oswald is expected to again walk down this hall. Yesterday, Oswald was interrogated continuously for some 10 hours before the charges, the formal charges of first-degree murder, were read to him late last night and early this morning by a Dallas County Justice of the Peace, David Johnston.
Is that what you're doing?
He has shown no signs, as we said, of breaking down under this intensive questioning. It was after an interrogation session today that police became convinced more than ever that Lee Harvey Oswald was their man. Paraffin tests confirmed that he had recently fired a rifle, possibly the assassination weapon. We apparently are going to have some delay in witnessing the Oswald transfer from City Hall in Dallas to the Dallas County Courthouse for a continuing jail term prior to his appearance for indictment before a grand jury here, probably sometime the early or middle of next week. For now, that is the story from Dallas. This is Roger Sharp at WFAA TV in Dallas. Now back to Murphy Martin at ABC News in New York.
A leading communist in the world, Marshal Tito of Yugoslavia, who visited President Kennedy a little more than a month ago, pays this tribute to Mr. Kennedy via relay satellite.
Daddy?
The news of the criminal attempt against the President of the United States of America, John Kennedy, and
This
of
is
his
from a
tragic
relay
death
satellite.
deeply shocked me, shocked and moved me and all people of our country. This sad news has struck me as the more as I have had recently an opportunity to talk cordially with the President Kennedy and reassure myself through this direct contact that he was deeply aware of the need of preserving world peace and of settling international issues in a peaceful way. President Kennedy has left upon me a powerful impression, both as a statement and a man. I remember him from that meeting as a statesman of highest quality who understood the affairs in the world and who underworked, in spite of obstacles, of all kinds to act towards the improving of international relations. His activities, regardless of all difficulties he had to face in his work,
I'm not going to record any more relays. I took the thing away from the guy talking. So, okay. I'm going to pause it.
Awaiting in Dallas the transfer of suspect Lee Harvey Oswald from the Dallas City Jail to the Dallas County Jail, now that police here believe that they do have a very, very tight case against this young pro-communist sympathizer. Quoting police Captain Will Fritz, the case is cinched. There is no question in our minds that this man killed the president. With us here in the studios of WFAA TV in Dallas are two members of the Dallas Police Department, two brave men who took part in the apprehension yesterday of Lee Harvey Oswald. To refresh your memory, Oswald was actually captured several hours after the assassination of the president in a theater some distance from the assassination scene. He was found inside this theater and apprehended. On my right, Detective Paul Bentley, and on my left, Patrolman M.N. McDonald. I believe, Patrolman McDonald, you were involved first in going into the theater. Could you describe for us what happened?
Well, I walked into the rear exit after a person had pointed out a person had run into the theater in a suspicious way, and there was about 15 people inside the theater at the time, and there's one person was sitting back there alone near the rear of the theater, and as I approached him about 1 foot from him, he jumped out of his seat and held his hands up and says, "This is it." And he hit me in the face with his fist, blooding my nose, and I immediately grabbed him, and he went for his gun that was in his waist. And I went at the same time, and we were struggling in there, and I received a scratch on my cheek, evidently from the hammer of the gun as it came out of his belt. And as it was coming out, he snapped the trigger on the pistol, which misfired, luckily.
Was the pistol loaded?
Yes, fully loaded. It had 6 rounds in it.
Had you ever had an experience like this before?
Well, not this desperate, no, sir.
What was his mental state at the time of capture? Was he hysterical or screaming or...
He was cool and calm up until the time that he made that jump for me. And the whole time I watched him, as I approached him, he was calm. He didn't move, he didn't flinch.
Detective Bentley, could you tell us your part in the apprehension?
Yes, sir. I was out on the 10th Street address where Patrolman J.D. Tippett had been shot, and we received the information that the suspect had just entered the Texas Theater. Captain Talbert of the Radio Patrol and myself went to the Texas Theater, and Captain Talbert let me out to go in the front while he covered the rear of the theater. On entering the theater, I went to the balcony where I was told that this suspect had gone to. Assisting me up there were several uniformed officers, and I advised them to search the people in the balcony, and I proceeded to go down to the lower floor. Just as I got to the back of the theater, I noticed the scuffling that was going on between Patrolman McDonald and this suspect. I immediately, in some way, I don't know how, I sprained my ankle in getting over the seats to aid Patrolman McDonald, but in aiding him, I twisted my ankle, causing some severe strain to my ankle. The time I got a hold of the suspect, Patrolman McDonald was scuffling with him, trying to get the gun away from him, and by the time we got him pretty well subdued, we had the assistance of 4 or 5 other patrolmen and other officers.
I believe the crutches behind me are evidence of the injuries you suffered in yesterday's capture. What would be your description of the suspect at the time?
At the time I encountered the suspect, of course, he was resisting and fighting and scuffling with Patrolman McDonald, and of course, scuffling with the rest of us. He was subdued and handcuffed and was making several remarks as we removed him from the theater out to the squad waiting to transport him down to Homicide and Robbery Bureau. I accompanied the officers to Homicide and Robbery Bureau in the squad and talked with the suspect on the way to the City Hall. His comment was, "Why are you placing me in jail when all I have done is carried a pistol into a theater?" We explained to him that he was being placed in jail for suspicion of murder regarding the patrolman J.D. Tippett. He stated he had not shot anyone at that time and became very belligerent on the way to the City Hall. We advised him that he could do his talking a little bit later. He was then taken and turned over to Captain Fritz.
You made no mention to him of the possible charges of murdering the president at that time.
No, sir, I did not myself, because at the time of the arrest I had no knowledge whatsoever that this might possibly be our suspect in regards to the assassination of the president.
Detective Bentley, I understand that you are one of the top polygraph experts for the city. As you undoubtedly know, the suspect has refused a lie detector examination, but certainly with your experience with criminals, would you care to make any estimation about how he might survive? Is he that cool, calm, and collected, or what would you do?
My personal feeling at this time certainly would not be the proper time to give the suspect a polygraph examination after being continuously interrogated by our officers. I think that there's no doubt in my mind that the suspect would be a fit polygraph suspect or subject, possibly in a day or two when he calms down a little bit. But he is rather upset at this time, and I feel like a polygraph examination in the future would be very good if he would submit to it.
You believe that he at that time was at all afraid that you were placing him under suspicion for the murder of the president?
He certainly didn't appear that way, not a bit, not in the least.
Was he unlike most of your confrontations of this nature, or would you say that he was pretty typical? I mean, was there anything unique or different about him is what I'm after.
No,
of the General Assembly.
Summer vacations. Win a free one-week dream vacation from
along beside them. They are entering a door which leads to an elevator which goes up to the jail on the top floor of this building. Excuse me, please. Lee Oswald. The mother, the two children, the wife of Lee Oswald came out of the detective bureau, went into this door here on my left, and that door leads to an elevator which goes upstairs to the top floor of the Dallas Police Department building. That's where the city jail is located, and that's where Lee Harvey Oswald has been held since he was arrested yesterday and since he was charged late last night at almost midnight with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The wife and the mother, who have been into and out of the Detective Bureau twice this morning, have been quoted by the district attorney of Dallas County as saying they are trying to arrange counsel for Oswald. So far, we have no definite word on whether counsel has been retained for his defense. When they came out once before, as you noticed then, they had nothing to say to reporters. When they came out once before, the elder woman, his mother, would say only no comment. His wife would say only go away. The story so far here at Dallas Police Department, where witnesses have been parading in throughout the day, has been just a matter of a very brief comment. Now, we did talk to Captain Will Fritz, the chief of detectives for the Dallas Police Department. He says that they have managed to establish through investigation roughly where Oswald went yesterday after he left the building from which it's believed the president was shot. Now, Oswald has admitted that he was in the building at the time the president was shot. He told us last night, as a matter of fact, that, of course, he was in the building and that he worked there. The detective captain told us that he left the building, took a bus. The bus was going too slow, so he got out and took a cab, went to his apartment, and picked up a jacket. It was from there, he said, that he went to the theater where he was arrested. Now, police say that the first killing he was charged with, the death of a Dallas policeman, they say this took place between the theater. Oswald, of course, denies that he killed a policeman, and he has denied staunchly so far throughout the day, from what we've been able to learn from authorities, that he had any connection with or knew anything about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. That's the story from here. This is Nelson Benton at the Dallas Police Department. Now back to our special coverage.
Lee Oswald's mother, who lives in Fort Worth, Texas, who raised Lee Oswald as the youngest of three sons after the death of his father shortly after his birth, says that he was a good boy, contributed most of his earnings to help her and the other members of the family. His wife was Russian-born. He married her during his 3 years in Russia. They have two small children. And here is another picture of the wife. If we could get it up, there it is. The wife and the two children at the Dallas police station. You see the children in the back of the police car there with Oswald's wife.
They aren't sure that's him. He could have.
And his mother, who was sitting in the front seat of that car, driving away from the garage in the basement of the police station in Dallas. The Soviet news agency TASS, in its home service, a Russian language service, has reported the following. It is accusing the American police of trying to implicate the Communist Party in the assassination of President Kennedy. It made this comment: "The more details are reported," said Toss, "the darker and more suspicious the whole case is." It said serious commentators are not putting faith in the police story about left-wing elements being responsible for this monstrous crime. They continue to await the results of further investigation. That is the report from the Soviet press service TASS, so far carried only in the Russian language inside of the Soviet Union. From the White House have been removed now the personal papers and files of the late President Kennedy, removed to the Executive Office building across the street. Also, a poignant note, 2 of his rocking chairs have been removed from the offices of the President and placed in storage. Let's go back to the White House in Washington now, and Robert Pierpoint.
Of Wisconsin, Republican, just went in to the White House to pay his respects, and also Admiral Louis Strauss.
Later, he was quoted as saying, "Capitalism has passed its peak. I would like to spend the rest of my life here." State Department officials said their records show that Oswald turned in his American passport and in an affidavit declared, "I affirm that my allegiance is to the Soviet Socialist Republic." That information about Lee Harvey Oswald, charged with being the assassin of President Kennedy. Now we go again to Washington.
Outside the White House in Washington, senators, congressmen, and other high visitors are still coming in. The governor of Massachusetts, Endicott Peabody, and his wife, and the lieutenant governor, Vellotti, state treasurer Driscoll, have all come to the White House.
Is that George Meany? No. I can't quite see. Yes, I believe it is. George Meany, the president of the AFL-CIO, who was contacted by President Lyndon Johnson a short while ago to ask for Meany's cooperation and that of all labor in seeing that the nation meets its economic needs and goals, the goals first set forth by President Kennedy.
Against the man they have under arrest. So, Bill, if you will help me, we will try to talk here and think about some of these things. There is, first of all, the fact that the man was employed in the building from which the fatal shots were fired.
And took the job only a short time before the president's trip.
Which would seem to have some implication. The fact that he was in the building at the time the fatal shots were fired. The fact that he left work that morning with a long brown object wrapped in paper underneath his arm, which he passed off to the men who gave him a ride to work as being window shades. There is the fact that after the firing, he was seen in the building.
In the lunchroom.
In the lunchroom by a policeman who approached him and
was told by a manager.
Was in the process of drawing a gun. When the manager of the building said that the man worked there, therefore he was all right, so he was allowed to go. Then it becomes kind of confused. As we understand it, he left there, took first a bus, because a bus transfer ticket was found in his clothing when he was placed under arrest. But presumably he found this means of transportation too slow. He then took a taxi cab. We know that after President Kennedy had already been taken to the hospital and was in fact dead, that Oswald showed up at the rooming house where he had rented a small room. He was seen by the housekeeper there. She said he rushed in.
Picked up a jacket.
Said nothing to no one, and she said, "My, you're in a great hurry."
And he took right off again.
then, as far as I'm concerned, the trail lapses until the time that he was nearly outside the theater.
Well, apparently, Frank, what happened next is a policeman, somehow, word of this man got out, and a policeman had heard a radio broadcast about a suspect.
Now,
that policeman was Tippett, I believe, who is now dead.
Why they put out a broadcast on this particular man, we don't yet know.
We don't yet know. It may have been that people back at the building started putting two and two together. And in any event, the officer Tippett had heard this broadcast. He apparently challenged Oswald on the street, and Oswald is said to have fired, fatally killing the policeman. He then, as near as I can recall what happened, went to a movie theater.
Yes,
and went into the theater and apparently looked somewhat abnormal. So that the cashier is said to have turned in an alarm, although I did see something here in this mountain of copy we have indicating that a civilian got on the radio of the dead policeman's car and called the police.
Yes, they still don't know that man's name. But his report, which brought police to that immediate vicinity, and then the report of the cashier that there was a man in the movie behaving strangely. That is, he was getting up and moving around from seat to seat and seemed to be in an extremely nervous and agitated condition. That brought police actually to the theater. Where the movie was in progress. Yeah, they turned the house lights on. They saw him sitting in the third row from the rear. They say at that time that Oswald stood up, said, "This is it," and tried to pull a gun. That about 6 policemen pounced upon him. He was not able to fire. Earlier reports said the gun would not fire, but in any event, he did not fire further. He was dragged, as they say, kicking and screaming from the theater and taken to the Dallas City Hall, where he has remained since. He has steadfastly insisted that he is innocent. He has admitted nothing. So far as we know, he has not been given any legal advice. He has not been accompanied by an attorney. I have seen one story saying he has requested an attorney, but nothing to indicate that he's yet been provided with legal counsel. Charges of murder, the Texas policeman Tippett were first filed against him. Then late last night, charges of murder of the President of the United States were lodged against him. And this morning, paraffin tests were given to his hands and his cheeks. And they say the results of these tests, which pick up any tiny little granules of gunpowder that might remain on the body, indicated or were positive insofar as both hands were concerned. The implication being here that it takes 2 hands to hold a rifle, the sort of weapon with which the president was killed. Paraffin test administered to the face. Results of that we as yet do not know.
There is also this, Frank, a report that the chief of the Dallas police, Jesse Curry, says that a palm print, palm of a hand, on a cardboard carton near the window where the fatal shots were fired has been positively identified as Oswald's and was considered an important piece of evidence. So bits and pieces of it are coming out, although officials have understandably, as Frank said that they cannot reveal all the information they have.
Let me again emphasize that our reason for doing this is not to try this man here and now, but to refresh and sort of put in chronological order the accumulation of evidence that Dallas police and FBI agents and other federal investigators have been able to amass as they try to solve the crime. The man is under arrest. He is charged with murder, but he has entitled what you and I would be entitled to under similar circumstances, a suspension of judgment until such time as a jury of his peers decides whether he did in fact kill the President of the United States.
There is this, too, from the Soviet Union, Frank. The Soviet news agency TASS has accused American police of trying to implicate the Communist Party in the assassination of President Kennedy. TASS says, and this is a quote, "The more details are reported, the darker and more suspicious the whole case is." The dispatch noted that Dallas police had told newsmen that Oswald admitted being a communist, if not an actual party member. And TASS also noted that Oswald spent 2 years in the Soviet Union, that he has a Russian wife, and his reported connections with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Frank?
I'd like to mention again that all of NBC's regular programs have been canceled until after President Kennedy's funeral on Monday. And we return now to the White House.
People continue to arrive here at the White House on this gray, dreary afternoon to pay respects to John F. Kennedy. The procession started at 11 o'clock this morning. It continues now, almost 5 hours later. The Kennedy family went in shortly after 10. Mrs. Kennedy, the two children, President Johnson, President Eisenhower, leaders of Congress at 11, the cabinet, then members of the so-called little cabinet. This afternoon, old friends, congressmen, governors. Mr. Truman was here. He went upstairs, spent 15 minutes with Mrs. Kennedy. Mr. Johnson is across the street working in his office. Here you see the crowd in Lafayette Park. They've been standing there. They started standing there yesterday afternoon. They've been there all night. They're still there today. Not so many umbrellas as before because the rain has slacked. It's a very warm day for late November. Temperature in the 60s.
There you have it.
These people are across Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House, looking at the White House. The White House has given out a list of the foreign dignitaries who are coming for the funeral ceremonies. From the United Kingdom, Prince Philip, Prime Minister Sir Alex Douglas Hume, the Permanent Undersecretary of the Foreign Office, Sir Harold Katcha, the former Ambassador of Great Britain to the United States. From Ireland, President De Valera, a man the President knows. He visited with him this June in Ireland, old Dev, the old patriarch of Ireland. From France, President Charles de Gaulle, Foreign Minister Couve de Mourville. From Japan, Foreign Minister Masayoshi Ohira. From the USSR, Anastas Bakoyan. Do you have some news, Bob?
Just that Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Goldberg, has just gone in. We presume to see President Johnson. There were tears in Justice Goldberg's eyes. He said we'd lost a very great president. He was obviously very saddened by the events of the past 24 hours.
So the tearful procession continues. Now back to Merrill Muller.
President Johnson, of course, is extremely occupied, thus he has not been visible to our cameras for some hours. But it's noteworthy that he worked very late at his own home, The Elms, last night, and his first act on being awakened this morning was to call the Church of the President's, St. John's, and arrange for a private service. We have film now of that service, or at least of President Johnson, arriving at St. John's for the service. This is just across the park from the White House. It's 149 years old, has been traditionally used by presidents because of its Episcopal denomination. But of course, Mr. Kennedy, the first Catholic president, went to a Catholic church.
Also, with the increasing cloudiness, we will have a little bit of fog rolling in. Somebody's found a kitty cat. Who does it belong to?